Welcome to MythVision Podcast. I'm your host, Derek Lambert. I hope you stay tuned because you're going to hear things you will never hear from Christian and Jewish apologists. They just will not be clear about this. They're not going to tell you what's really going on in these texts today. I have a guest, Dr. Kipp Davis, who's going to join me today. He's going to expound on this, make it very clear on what we're looking at, and how things went from polytheism to monotheism in the Bible. And with that being said, let's start with our intro. Made a little custom one specifically for Dr. Kipp. If you have any questions, feel free to super chat them. I see we already have one, and I will ask those during the presentation.
Back in Washington, Kipp Davis is getting his first look at a final prized fragment in the Museum of the Bible's collection.
This is a fragment that contains text from Genesis chapter 32, and it's supposedly from the 1st century BC or the 1st century CE.
We are MythVision. Welcome back to MythVision Podcast. My guest today, Dr. Kipp Davis. It is time for people to wake up. It really is. We are 2,000 years late to the party. We need to wake up and realize what's going on. Humans are clever. Humans can come up with so many amazing ways of bending language, of bending ideas that we find in nature and patterns and things like that, and create the most clever, interesting ideas. I think this is a development of religion itself. But stay tuned, because you're going to find out things about the Dead Sea Scrolls that you don't hear and you don't see within your canonized Bibles. Some of the things may be mentioned that are there, but some of these things have completely been ignored. And today, we're not going to ignore those things. With that being said, I have our special guest, Dr. Kipp Davis. I finally have your name right, Dr. Kill. I'm calling him Dr. Kill because he got nicknamed that. You are muted, my friend.
No, I'm not. That was me very, very silently pretending to be muted. So,
Well,
hi, Derek.
I
Merry
appreciate-
Christmas to
You
you
too.
and to everyone else, or happy solstice, or however you choose to celebrate it. I still like saying Merry Christmas. So Merry
It doesn't
Christmas,
hurt my
everyone.
feelings. Yeah, I don't.
Okay,
I don't
that's
get
fine.
offended when I see a nativity scene on a church parking lot or a church front lawn. I don't care.
I am all about religious appropriation. It's a good thing. So
Yeah,
So-
I You did a live stream or a premiere yesterday, and I think we'll play a clip of that, of course. But I have a couple super chats I want to recognize first as we get into
Yeah.
this. This is a very dense topic that I think when I've asked this of people like Dr. Michael Heiser and others, they have other ways of trying to avoid or downplay these variants that we're going to get into that are found within these Qumran scrolls that are evident of an earlier idea in, if I could call it, in the Jewish religion, because at the time it wasn't called Judaism. I mean, it
No.
wasn't like that's anachronistic. So it's very difficult.
Jewish religion itself is anachronistic. I mean, we can talk about Iron Age, Iron Age Palestinian religion, which itself is problematic, or Iron Age Israelite religion, which is also problematic because it's a Canaanite religion, very much like all the other Canaanite religions. So it's even just talking about this is problematic.
Right.
And it's problematic because while the sources we have, lots of them date back to the Iron Age, they've been heavily edited and redacted and rewritten through the exilic period, like the Babylonian period, the Greco-Roman period, the period of what we call Second Temple Judaism. So yes, it's a problem.
Thank you so much. A couple super chats. Vaguely agnostic. Thank you for the 666, my friend. Dr. Kill is everywhere. One of them omni beings. Dr. Kill, are you omnipresent? Is this?
I am. Yes.
Okay.
And I'm not a Trinity.
Okay.
I'm a divinity. I don't know. How do you say that? Because I am Dr. Kipp, the warm and fuzzy Dr. Kipp, and the evil, vengeful Old Testament Dr. Kill, all in one.
That's true. So you're the Jekyll and Hyde. You're a schizophrenic.
100% Dr. Kill. But no, because it's schizophrenia is the wrong way to understand the divinity.
Okay. Hypostatic union.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And it's beyond any of our comprehension how it works. Right. It just does.
Yeah, but just believe it. And we have clear evidence that it's true, right?
Well, obviously. I'm here, aren't I?
Yeah, exactly. Bingo. Everybody who denies that, just silence your mouths. Okay. You don't have anything to say. There's evidence right here. Gnostic Informant, my buddy Neil, go subscribe to Neil, of course. And I forgot to mention, everybody go subscribe to you. I like both of you guys.
If you've done it, go and do it again.
Just make sure that when you do it again, you didn't unsubscribe. That's all I'm asking you to do.
Right.
He says, question for Dr. Kipp: is Peter Flint's questionable translation of Psalm 22 challenged by anyone other scholars besides you, or widely accepted?
It's so. Yeah, that's a good question that I'm not entirely clear on because I've been out of touch a little bit in the last 10 years or so on that particular topic. And I'm not exactly sure, but it's something I feel like I should probably go back and take a look at what people are doing with it. So
awesome.
Sorry, Neil.
No, you're fine. And anyone mods that are in the chat, Neil, if you're in there, any mods, do me a favor. I also pinned Dr. Kipp's YouTube channel in the comments section. But if you guys are not able to see it, or you just somehow aren't aware of how to do that, someone in the chat, please constantly throughout the video, remind everybody to go subscribe to his channel, trying to grow his channel, to get more people acquainted with his scholarship and his ideas. He spends quite a bit of time editing these premieres and these documentaries, the Josh McDowell documentary, lots of work. And the least we could do is go over there, be fans, support them, like the videos, comment. Even if you don't like the video, comment. If you're a critic and you have something to say, comment and let them know what you say. It just helps get the ideas out there so that we can actually have these discussions. All right. Anubis Fire, thank you for the super chat. Dr. Kipp, have you made any attempts at linking the Hebrew patriarchy genealogy back to the Northwest Semitic gods?
No, I have not. Yeah, I don't. Sorry, that's a bit, as Dr. Josh would say, that's a bit outside my area of expertise.
Yeah.
So,
I asked him
yeah,
to
it's an
tell me what he
interesting
thought about
question,
the
though.
thumbnail. I was like, look, what do you think about this thumbnail? He's like, that's a bit outside of my expertise. And I was like, dude, just tell me if you like the thumbnail. Which one looks better? No, that's outside my expertise. I'm not going to comment on that. That's what you did to me earlier. So I want to let everybody know. Don't feel bad if he's not able to answer your questions.
Sorry about that.
No, you're fine. You're fine. He's a Dead Sea Scrolls
But it is.
scholar.
It's an interesting question. So
It is. It is.
sounds like a Thomas Thompson sort of question.
Thomas Thompson. Yeah, I appreciate the super chat though. If you want to email me your question, I could see if there's any scholar who might have done something like that, because I'm always in communication with them. Yeah. Mr. Monster's back. What is up? He says, I'm curious as to how much influence the Punic Wars, especially the final Punic War and the fall of Carthage, has in connection with Judaism early on.
And that's another good question. I'm not sure I have the answer to. That's something else that I would be curious about as well. I mean, what we tend to see is Judaism as it kind of kernelized in the Hebrew Bible, in the Second Temple Jewish literature, in the New Testament and beyond. It's sort of finding its final shape already before the Punic Wars. So I think we can probably go back to the mid 2nd century BCE to start seeing like a fundamental Judaism that develops into the New Testament era and beyond, and basically becomes rabbinic Judaism. And then I mean, it's complex though, because there's so many other parts of Judaism that we have echoes of, we have hints of, but we just don't have any access to, because people like the Sadducees just didn't leave us any texts to read. So it's very likely that that there's a lot more going on that we don't know about. And I'm sure even within the sources that we do have, that there's an element there that gets picked up on. I mean, we know, well, just for an example, we do know that the prophecy in Numbers, I think it's Numbers chapter 22, featuring Balaam, where he mentions the Kittim. This is a prophecy that got carried forward by the Jews after in the 1st century, and applied then pretty directly to the Romans. We see it in 4Q 252, the famous so-called commentary on Genesis. And I've actually written an article about this, on how this passage and this idea of Amalek as the progenitor of Rome gets turned into a polemic. And we see some hints of this in a couple of the texts of the Dead Sea Scrolls. If you're interested in finding that article, it appears in the George Brooke Festschrift. What is that called? It's called, see if I can see it here on my shelf. Sorry, guys. Is There a Text in This Cave? Edited by Ariel Feldman and others. So
thank you.
But thank you for the question.
Yeah, NW89 has a question or super chat. Thank you for the super chat. Forget Christian apologists. What about old Pentateuch apologists? How old are the Dead Sea Scrolls? And do they contradict Gamirkin's Hellenistic Torah thesis? So I don't know if you're well aware of Russell Gamirkin's thesis, but how old are the Dead Sea Scrolls? What's the oldest that we can actually say with confidence that's what's up? And I think what he means is old Pentateuch apologists, if you will, people who are, I suspect, within Judaism, that are also arguing to try and, validate their faith, just like Christians might be.
Yeah, possibly. I'm not overly familiar with Gomurkin's work. I've seen bits and pieces of it here and there. I think the scrolls are a problem for him. The oldest of them date back to about 250 BCE, and there's not a lot of those. There's there's texts. There's a copy of the Book of Exodus from that early, possibly a copy of the Book of Jeremiah from that early. Just trying to think off the top of my head what else is back there.
While you do
There's
that, I just want to
also-
mention old Pentateuch apologists. I think he's just talking about scholars who want to like push it back to like 1000 BC. The literature's like really, really old and stuff.
Yeah, and this is the problem, right? Like we don't have source material that goes back that far. The oldest quote unquote biblical text that we have is a pair of silver amulets that were discovered at Catephrenom. And they contain text in Paleo Hebrew from or the text that looks very much like the Aaronic priestly blessing. Sorry.
Okay.
The Aaronic priestly blessing. Also from the Book of Numbers. It's very similar. This is the text, may Yahweh grant you peace, may Yahweh make his face shine down upon you, etc., etc. It's not exactly like how it appears in the Book of Numbers. There's some important textual differences, but these two little amulets could be as old as the 6th century BCE, which I think is pretty impressive. But at minimum, what it does show is that there is a deep history of many of these textual traditions. How big they are and how extensive they are, we simply don't know. But I think it's pretty clear that many of these things do go back to the Iron Age.
Yeah, that brings up so many other questions. I got to get these super chats. So Ricky Johnson said, someone super chat $8.88. Thank you so much, Ricky. He did the 777 since someone did the 666.
Oh, I thought that was like that was like in Canadian dollars. It would come out to 666.
I don't know. I know I was reminded of the Slipknot song while I said that. Give me 555, give it 666. Anyway, up to the next one. You know which one I'm talking about. Look 05, thank you so much for the super chat. Please have Dan Vogel on next, author of Joseph Smith, The Making of a Prophet. Email me. I definitely would need to look this person up and check out their material. Thank you for the super chat. Email me, Derek@MythVisionPodcast.com. It's down in the description here on YouTube. I really do appreciate it. You got a Sentinel Apologetics. He says, am I really the Deepak Chopra of apologetics? What is up, man?
I'm sorry, Rob. I am. I hope you don't feel too bad that I said that about you. The reason I said it is because I've seen you say some things that are pretty out there when it comes to the Bible or when it comes to Christianity. It just sometimes when I see and read stuff from you, it just makes me think of woo. Sorry, man.
Maybe over a beer down the road, you guys can
I
talk
love
it out.
beer.
Yeah, maybe that. Look, this might be something in the future.
I have no immediate plans on flying to Australia, I'm afraid. But
well, maybe he'll make it to America one day. So, but yeah, thank you for the super chat. I appreciate it. He also has a Christian channel, so anybody who wants to hear the opposition to what I do half the time, maybe more, you would want to check out his channel. I've talked to him pretty extensively we had a long conversation not too long ago, and I think we share a lot in common in terms of just trying to create unity, even in the diversity of what we discuss and our differences. Farsight, thank you for the super chat. Are there any hints of what might have later developed into Christianity in the Dead Sea Scrolls? Could Christianity have started earlier, like 100 BC?
I would say, I think that's quite unlikely. But what the scrolls do reveal to us, and one of the very exciting things about them at the time of their discovery, was just how much information they provide about the Jewish background of Christianity, which really helped to show that the Jesus movement, and the Jesus that we know from the New Testament, actually fit very comfortably within this wider realm of like a pluralistic sort of Judaism. That there were groups of Jews who had expectations of a Messiah similar to Jesus, and that when Jesus taught and I guess what the Gospels have projected or suggested that Jesus taught also fits within this wider messianic expectation that's pretty similar in many respects to what we see in a lot of the Dead Sea Scrolls. There's some obvious differences, of course. Most of the Dead Sea Scrolls appear to be awaiting two messiahs, a messiah who would be like a new David, ruling the nation, and I guess and promoting peace from Israel for the rest of the world. And there would be a priestly messiah, like an anointed priest in the end of the age, who would basically officiate in the new cosmic temple. So it's complex, but yeah, it's I would say Christianity itself, I think, is pretty dependent still on the person of Jesus, on this figure who lived in the first century. But definitely there's a background there that's already developed that this expectation fits into.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Lee Spaner says, I love your show. Thank you, Lee. Love you, man. Thank you so much for the super chat, just the compliments, and everybody in the chat that I missed. I'm going to hit this last super chat here, and then we're going to jump into a clip from yesterday's stream where you were taking on Dr. Falk in one of his Q&As. But we're not going to be going into that. I hope everyone goes and watches it. I put the link down in the description of the video. So if you want to go watch his critical analysis with Dr. Josh, and who was the other doctor?
Dr. Dan McClellan. He is a scripture translation supervisor for the LDS Church, the Mormon Church. He and I know each other from grad school. I was doing a postdoc while he was an MA student at Trinity Western University. And he went on to do his PhD at the University of Exeter, studying under Francesca Stavrakopoulou, who was his dissertation supervisor. So she's awesome. He's a bright guy. He knows what he's doing. I think it's really neat because he's a practicing Mormon who also holds to a mainstream critical view of scripture. Yeah, so he knows what he's doing. He's got about like 100,000 or 200,000 TikTok followers.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, if you really want to get a good example, get someone who's actually pro the religion, right? And you're not just getting someone who may be an antagonist or someone, get someone who actually practices this, but they're calling it like they see it. I did that with Professor Jay Caballero, who's an evangelical Christian, to point out what slavery really was, which he perfectly lined up with, Bruce Wells, Dr. Joshua Bowen. They all agree there was no tiptoeing around the reality of what the Bible's saying and how the ancient Near Eastern ideas were. So it was just really fascinating to hear a believing Christian admit these things and go from there. So David, thank you for the super chat. Could you ask Dr. Davis if he has any book recommendations for an uncultured Philistine like myself who wants to learn about the Dead Sea Scrolls?
There's lots. There's a few that I can recommend. Perhaps the best one, as far as I know, still is a book by James C. Vanderkam. It's gone through I believe 3 revisions. It's called The Dead Sea Scrolls Today. He's a very, very sober, bright scholar from the University of Notre Dame. And he's written just an excellent introduction to the Dead Sea Scrolls, what they are, where they came from, the people behind them, what how they help us to understand the Bible and Jewish culture and religion and Christianity. Some other ones. There's a book by John J. Collins that I really like called Beyond the Qumran Community. Do I actually have that on my shelf here?
There's also an Audible with John J. Collins does. So if anyone who wants to just give it a listen, I think it's 3 or 4 hours long, and it just scratches the surface on like just teasing you with an appetizer. So you may want to check that out.
His Eschatology and Messianism book has lots of really good information on the Dead Sea Scrolls as well. Vanderkam and my own mentor, Professor Peter Flint, wrote a pretty substantial introductory text on the Dead Sea Scrolls called The Meaning of the Dead Sea Scrolls. That's quite a good one as well. There's a bunch. So I think through any of those you'll get lots of excellent background information and get a good grasp on what's going on there. That is until I write my own book.
And when you do, we're going to be doing episodes on that. So thank you. Thank you so much, Neil, for promoting Dr. Kipp's YouTube. Everybody subscribe. We're going to go ahead and first plug his YouTube, letting everybody know this is where you want to go. This is the video that's down in the description. And we're going to be playing a specific part of the video where he's addressing these variants that clearly, to me, to Dr. Kipp, and I'm sure various other scholars that are in the field that he works in, are indicative, if you will, of a pantheon of deities at the very least. And I know that the way this is dealt with, when I've asked this particular variant to, it was Dr. Michael, I don't know why I just Heiser, yeah. He has the henotheism explanation that he's willing to grant that these are gods, plural, but there's one supreme, and it is divine being Yahweh, or chief God, if you will, El, however you want to look at it. But there weren't multiple deities in charge. He admits there's many gods, but not polytheism, the worship of many. So anyway, either way you get to it, it's not strict monotheism, no matter how you chop it up. And I want everybody to just see that real quick. So let me share my screen. Did you want to say something before we hit play?
No, we can talk about it afterwards, I think.
All right. Awesome. Let me make sure I've got this right. Here we go. All right. Let me know if you can hear it. And I think I started it at the right time. So bear with me if I didn't.
Basically, what's going on here, a careful appraisal of the Hebrew texts themselves shows a distinct progression from polytheism towards monotheism. And this passage from Deuteronomy 32, 8-12 that Dr. Dan mentioned retains an obvious reflection of a polytheistic worldview. Here's a photograph of the fragment of 4Q Deuteronomy J, which contains the passage in question. 4Q Deuteronomy J dates back to the mid-1st century CE, and while it is not the oldest manuscript copy of the Book of Deuteronomy, it does retain the earliest physical evidence of this crucial reading. In the passage, the chief god of the region, El Elyon, is pictured dividing the territory amongst the council of gods. When Elyon apportioned the nations, when he separated the sons of Adam, he set the boundaries of the people according to the sons of God, or maybe even the gods. In the following verse, Israel's tribal deity Yahweh is distinguished from the chief god Elyon. Thus, Yahweh's portion is his people Jacob, the region of his hereditary property. So there is an obvious problem for both monotheism and the insistence on exclusivity of Yahweh's divinity in this passage. And we can trace how Jewish scribes handle the matter. In the Septuagint, the Greek translator rendered the Hebrew construction B'nai Elohim, sons of God, into Angelon Theo, the angels of God. By the time of the Hellenistic period, it had become commonplace to reimagine the lower members of the Canaanite pantheon as angels and not actual gods. The form of the passage that most are familiar with appears in the Masoretic Text. This is the version of the Hebrew Bible that the post-temple rabbinic Jews adopted as their standard text. Parts of the MT were clearly already in circulation before the 2nd century BCE, but the oldest manuscript copies stem from after the 3rd century. The MT rendition of this problematic passage was to change B'nai Elohim to B'nai Yisrael, thus rendering the sense of this ideology into nonsense. This is the passage that is clearly unknown to Dr. Falk, and which he reads in his response. When Elyon apportioned the nations, when he separated the sons of Adam, he set the boundaries of the people according to the sons of Israel. For Yahweh's portion is his people Jacob, the region of his hereditary property. Thanks to the Dead Sea Scrolls and the Septuagint, we see a clear line of development from polytheistic Israel, where the tribal god Yahweh was a member of El Elyon's council of deities, to the Septuagint, where the council was replaced by angels, to the MT, where the angels were omitted altogether. But there is more. So this fragment, 4Q Deuteronomy 2, which dates to the mid-1st century BCE, and like 4Q Deuteronomy J, survives as the oldest copy of Deuteronomy 32, but preserving only verses 41 to 43, and these look different from our biblical texts. The English translation most of us are accustomed to is derived from the later Masoretic Text, which has eliminated and changed critical portions of the passage. The MT reads, "Sing praises nations for his people. For the blood of his servants he will avenge. He will wreak vengeance on his enemies and cleanse the land of his people." The altered portions are highlighted in red. From the earlier text, a stanza is missing. "Bow down before him, all you gods." The following line has been changed from Yahweh's vengeance on behalf of his sons to his servants, thus glossing over a polytheistic view of the divine council. There is another missing stanza appearing at the end of the passage. "He will repay those who hate him." The reasons for these changes is rather obvious from both clear perspectives of the development of monotheistic ideals in Israel and later Jewish religion, and of the nature of Hebrew poetry. The original form of the passage is in 3 pairs of parallel statements. "Praise, O heavens, his people, bow down before him, all you gods, for he will avenge the blood of his sons and take vengeance on his adversaries. He will repay those who hate him and cleanse his people's land." For a later editor, the polytheistic essence of the second stanza prompted its omission and the alteration of the object in the third stanza from "blood of his sons" to "blood of his servants." But these changes also created an uneven poetic structure. By also eliminating the 5th stanza, the entire poetical structure is improved and also changed into a chiastic grouping of 4 lines featuring people, vengeance, vengeance, and people. So it is clear from the manuscript evidence that monotheism is something that did in fact develop within early Judaism over time, and that latent forms of a developed polytheism continue to persist. Okay, But I think
I
that's
think
that's probably good, eh? we can.
Rock on.
So I
Yeah.
encourage everyone to like to go and watch the whole video. That's just a bit of it. Dr. Dan and I spend a bit more time discussing the issue and specifically the problems behind Dr. Falk's reading of that particular text and his dismissal of what's going on there. And there's also a lot of really good stuff that Josh provides about slavery in the Old Testament. So go check it out. I did want to say one other thing that didn't come out in that presentation I think is pretty important to point out here. So this textual variant, the B'nai Elohim, I hope everybody understood this, that within the text of Deuteronomy 32, this original reading, when Elyon divided the nations according to the numbers of the B'nai Elohim, the sons of God, or possibly even gods, but I don't think. Never mind. So that original reading, at some point later in time, got changed by Hebrew scribes, and I think the reasons for the change are pretty obvious, because this promotes an idea of polytheism, minimally a henotheism similar to what Heiser has posited, but I think the view, certainly within a much later period of time, just found this completely untenable. So the text itself was changed from he numbered the people according to the sons of God to he numbered the people according to the sons of Israel, which itself is a very, like, on the face of it, kind of a strange reading. So up until the discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls between 1947 and 1953, there were no Hebrew texts that read anything but B'nai Israel. But of course, it's important to point out as well that the oldest Hebrew texts that we had to draw from were all medieval. You're talking about 9th, 10th century at the earliest. The Aleppo Codex dates back to the 9th century, and that's the oldest copy of that we have. The Leningrad Codex, which is a complete copy of the Hebrew Bible, dates back as far as the 10th century. And then beyond that, we have a few little snippets and fragments from a couple of texts that date a bit earlier. The earliest one being, this is before the discovery of the Dead Sea Scrolls, there was a fragment that contains, it's a papyrus fragment called the Nash Papyrus, and it contains the 10 Commandments from the Book of Exodus with some interesting variations, as well as the Shema from the Book of Deuteronomy. And this fragment, which is like about this big, and it seems to have just been, a sheet that contained these texts. So this dates back to about the mid-2nd century BCE, and it was discovered in the 1800s. So up until the time the Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered, this is all that scholars had to draw on with regards to the Hebrew text. But there was already suspicions that this was a text that was tampered with, because we had Septuagint manuscripts, Greek translations of the Hebrew Bible, which dated back to, certainly far earlier than the Hebrew copies that we had, that reflected this old reading, this B'nai Elohim. And lo and behold, in the Dead Sea Scrolls, we have found now this one fragment from this manuscript of Deuteronomy, 4Q Deuteronomy J, which dates to 50 BCE. I think it said on the screen 50 BCE, and I said 50 CE for some reason. So it dates to 50 BCE, and it contains this reading, B'nai Elohim. So this is the situation, and I guess part of the point here is that this change from B'nai Elohim to B'nai Yisrael is something that could have taken place even after the destruction of the Jerusalem temple into, who knows how far we can go beyond that
I kind
point.
of wonder if it became kind of a polemic with the rise of Christianity, especially, when you talk about henotheism and polytheism. This is something that Dr. Heiser brought up, right? And he thinks more henotheism, if you will. At the end of the day, when we look at the Canaanite pantheon, we know that this was polytheistic. And at the end of the day, we also know over and over throughout the Bible, Israel was worshiping these other deities. So even if you wanted to grant, well, the original intention of the literature was henotheistic, they got suckered into multiple worship of different deities and not just the one God. So it seems the evidence leans that if it was henotheistic, before that it was polytheistic. So there's like the idea that it's always been henotheistic from the start, I think, and I could be wrong, is that apologetic kind of thing coming from a serious scholar like Heiser, who's kind of trying to, it was not polytheistic, but it was henotheistic with a pantheon of deities, with one supreme deity at the top that only that one received worship. And I guess if we were to look at like Marduk and other deities, they were the lead deity, the chief of the gods, but there were other deities. And are we going to say that the Mediterranean, these people in Mesopotamia, weren't worshiping these other deities as well as Marduk? These are big questions to ask. And one question I want to ask before we get to the super chats, if you want to make a comment, feel free. I just want to make a point. Is this a reflection of, in your opinion, I know this is way late in the day, but is this a reflection of Canaanite religion still within Israel's thought?
No,
I know that goes way back.
So I think by this point in time, like if we're talking about the actual manuscript itself, the time of the manuscript itself, 4Q Deuteronomy J, I think what's going on is by this point in time, the term B'nai Elohim has taken on a different meaning that is actually supplied by interaction with the Hellenists. This is part of the Hellenization of the old Israelite religion, and this is part of its development into what we come to understand to be Judaism. And in this development, you have now this this focus on a cosmic dualism. There's a stronger apocalyptic flavor to the religion. There's the focus on like this big realm. As in our video, as Dan clarifies, the gods in the Pantheon, this is sort of the period of time when they get downgraded to being just like servants or messengers, angels, within the single God's government, within his administration. So I think by this point in time, what's happening is that the people are reading this text with this understanding that there's angels in view, as opposed to actual, minor deities. I thought for today, and maybe before we move on, if we could just look at a few other texts, not necessarily scrolls, but just a few texts from the Hebrew Bible, which I think also reflect this idea of there being a tolerance for the notion that there's actually a whole bunch of other gods out there and not just Yahweh.
Okay, give me the passage. Yeah.
All right, let's start with Genesis chapter 1, verse 26. This is the famous one from the first creation story. And there's a few here from the first couple creation stories. Genesis 1, chapter 26 says, "Then God said," and this is singular, let us make man in our image, in our likeness, and let them rule over all the fish of the sea and the birds of the air and the livestock over all the earth." So here we have, and the verbs there are all plural. So we have a reflection of a sense of this divine counsel. Who is God speaking to in this creation text when he speaks of making man in our image? This is a reflection of him speaking to a larger group of divine beings. So we can move on to another one, Genesis chapter 3, verse 22. I quite like this one. And it's sort of the same idea. So this is um, after Adam and Eve have eaten the fruit from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. They've God has found out about this, and he's very upset, and he's, cursed the woman, and he's cursed the snake. And then in the aftermath, the text of um, 3 verse 22 says this: "And Yahweh God said, the man has now become like one of us, knowing good and evil. He must not be allowed to reach out his hand and take also from the tree of life and eat and live forever." So again, who is Yahweh speaking to here? A natural reading of the text and particularly within within its ancient Near Eastern context, would show that this is most likely Yahweh speaking to a pantheon of other deities. We can move on then to Genesis 11, verse 7. This is the story of the Tower of Babel. Um, the people have come together. They're starting to build this great tower. And then it says that Yahweh came down to see the city. This is starting in verse 5. Yahweh came down to see the city and the tower. I'm reading from the NIV, and I shouldn't be sorry. I'm going to change that. So, okay. Yahweh came down to look at the city and the tower that men had built. And Yahweh said, "If as one people with one language for all, this is how they have begun to act, and nothing that they propose to do will be out of their reach. Let us then go down and confound their speech there, so that they shall not understand one another's speech." So here again, same thing is going on. Yahweh is speaking to a larger group of divine beings. Um, Job chapter 1, verse 6 and chapter 2, verse 1. This is the famous story of God gathering all the divine beings into a council. These are the B'nai Elohim, the sons of the gods, and it says that the Satan, the accuser, was there with them. I want to just look at, in particular, Psalm 97, and this is something that I think is important to make, in particular, with regards to those who like to hold to the idea that there was always this henotheistic idea that yes, there are other gods out there, but Yahweh was always the supreme God. I think the Deuteronomy 32 passage itself speaks pretty um, sharply against that. But there's a handful of the Psalms which scholars have identified as divine enthronement songs. And the theory is that one of the theories with regards to this early period in the textual history of Israel, one of the ideas is that there's a point in time where Yahweh, the national deity of the people who identify themselves as Israel, he's like their tribal king, their national deity. But there's a point in time in which he actually assumes control over the pantheon and basically replaces the king of the gods before him. Scholars tend to think that there was a point in time in the thinking of the early Israelites in which Yahweh usurped El. And there are a handful of Psalms, Psalm 93, Psalm 97, Psalm 99, in which they scholars some scholars tend to think this is a reflection of an actual enthronement ceremony in which this is celebrated. The people gathered together for a festival and actually celebrated the enthronement of Yahweh as the king of the gods. So the texts, these particular texts, are fairly interesting. They don't explicitly um, say as much that this is what's going on, but they can be read, particularly if you have this in view in the background. You can sort of see how this takes place, and you can see how there is this idea of Yahweh assuming the kingship of the Pantheon. It's sort of embedded in there. So I thought maybe we could just take a look at one of these. And I'm just going to read Psalm 97, which is pretty short. So here we go. The text says, Yahweh is king, or Yahweh rules. Let the earth exult, the many islands rejoice. Dense clouds are around him. Righteousness and justice are the base of his throne. Fire is his vanguard, burning his foes on every side. His lightnings light up the world. The earth is convulsed at the sight. Mountains melt like wax at Yahweh's presence, at the presence of Yahweh, at the presence of the Lord of all the earth. The heavens proclaim his righteousness, and all people see his glory. All who worship images, who vaunt their idols, are dismayed. All divine beings now bow down to him. Zion, hearing it, rejoices. The towns of Judah exult because of your judgments, Yahweh. For you, Yahweh, are supreme over all the earth. You are exalted high above all divine beings. O you who love Yahweh, hate evil. He guards the lives of his loyal ones, saving them from the hand of the wicked. Light is sown for the righteous, radiance for the upright. O you righteous, rejoice in Yahweh and acclaim his holy name. So, I mean, this is just a sampling of some of the textual evidence that we tend to draw from when we as scholars say, look, there's a complex matrix of polytheistic of a polytheistic worldview that lies behind the texts, and which the texts themselves are drawing from.
I love it. I was reading it in my ESV version, and when you talk about divine beings in verse 7, it's pretty straightforward. Worship him, all you gods! Exclamation point.
Yeah.
Verse 9, you
Yeah.
are exalted far above all gods, meaning there are gods. And so, yeah, this is a really brilliant example, I think, of this enthronement idea. And it fits. It's like if it walks like a duck and it talks like a duck, and we have many examples of enthronement ideas that this is what's happening. I think it's just special pleading when we get to this book and trying to find a way to not allow that to be happening with the God of the Bible. I think that's what usually happens with Christians and Jews.
And I think you're right on there. And this is exactly where I would counter what Heiser and others are trying to do with these texts. I would say yes. Theoretically, there's nothing that contradicts your reading of the text, but within the larger matrix of the period, within what we see from the other Canaanite religions that were all around Israel, why would we posit something different when it looks exactly the same as what's going on in Ugarit, or in these other places where they harbored these polytheistic worldviews?
Dr. Kipp, may I get these super chats if you don't mind?
Let's get to them.
Awesome. Hey, this has been wonderful, everybody. Thank you for the likes, the comments, the super chats, and the love. Let's get into some of your questions. I told you I'd take them, and thank you for all those people who have sent them. Dennis R. Lecker, thank you for the super chat, my brother. He says, what does Dr. Kipp think of Eisenman's dating of the scrolls, Paul being the spouter of lies and the righteous teacher being James the Just?
No. Sorry. I don't think it's very credible. This is something that the Eisenman promoted a long time ago, back in the started promoting particularly back in the 90s. This is a view that has been rejected almost wholesale by scholars who work within the scrolls, and it's an idea that just has never gained any actual traction. It's a very, very popular idea that sells lots of books, because this is what sells lots of books. But I would say I think the dating of the scrolls and the dating of the New Testament in particular provide huge problems for what Eisenman wants to do with them. And
I'm
I
sure a
would
whole
say too,
episode.
so I will say this as well. Since the time Eisenman really started promoting this idea in the 1990s, I mean, even just within that, what is that? That's like a 30-year period now. We have made enormous strides in terms of our ability to accurately date the manuscripts themselves and to understand um, them within their scribal milieu, and they've really, really not helped Eisenman at all.
Thank you for that answer, Dennis. Thank you for the question. And I'm sure a whole show could be devoted into that particular one. So don't forget to subscribe to Dr. Kill. It's in the chat, everybody. Thank you, Neil, for that update. Farsight, thank you for the super chat. Is there anything in the Dead Sea Scrolls indicating the position of female divinity like Asherah? Sons of God seem central. What about daughters of God?
Well, so within the this is complicated. Again, we're dealing with a period in time. When we're talking about the scrolls, we're dealing with a period in time in which, as I suggested, these ideas are starting to coalesce around what became Jewish monotheism. So you're not going to see that promoted so much within the scrolls themselves, but I will say something that you do see retained in there is a reflection of some of these older ideas where it appears that God, that Yahweh himself, had an Asherah, had a female consort or a companion. It's been suggested that the texts, certain texts within Proverbs, I believe it's Proverbs chapter 8 or chapter 9, there's a celebration there of wisdom as like a companion, a female companion of God at the beginning of creation. You see some of this also reflected in I believe it's Proverbs chapter 31 or chapter 32. Something that we find in the scrolls that is really interesting is a lot of extra biblical so-called wisdom literature, which looks very much like what we see in the book of Proverbs, what we see in the book of Ben Sira, in which this figure, this personification of wisdom, is a female figure, and in very many respects behaves and looks quite a bit like a goddess, but without the text ever explicitly making that clear. So it's an interesting question. It's an interesting situation. What's going on there with the promotion of wisdom, chokhmah, but within this context now where it's becoming more fiercely monotheistic.
You know, just I want to leave this question with this wonderful super chat is, imagine if Christians actually accept that God once had a wife. Just a question. I don't know. I can't imagine what if I came to accept that when I was a Christian, what that would do in my understanding. Like, would that like radically shatter my entire framework and be like, whoa, nobody told me this. Why is nobody telling me this? Why is this not even a question being brought up in church? It's a wonderful question. Thank you, Farsight. I appreciate it. I hope most people start asking that question more. Maybe go check out William Deaver. Bill Deaver has some good stuff. So.
just to, in terms of, even just to be a little bit more specific for for Farsight here, you could check out some of the texts. There's a huge text called 4Q Instruction from the Dead Sea Scrolls. There's another text that's been designated the Wiles of the Wicked Woman. It's a wonderful little wisdom text. Those are two places that you could go to actually read some of the ways that the people who wrote and collected the Dead Sea Scrolls handled this idea of the personification of wisdom.
Thank you so much for that. Appreciate it, Kipp. Doc Pleroma, thank you for the super chat. Thoughts on condemned worship? I think he means of Asherah, being the Egyptian representation of Khufu. I don't know the name. I'm pronouncing it maybe wrong, or maybe the Hittite goddess Asertu.
I'm sorry, I don't know anything about that. As Dr. Josh would say, this is not my area of expertise.
You would admit though that the Bible, it does like what Dr. Price always talks about. When it says something, usually this is a red flag. When it's telling you not to do something, usually someone's doing it. People were definitely worshiping, and it's condemning the worship of divine woman Asherah, if that makes sense, right?
Absolutely. And I think what you can, and yeah, absolutely, I would totally agree with that. And one of my favorite things to do when venturing into this topic, and if any of your viewers have watched any of my other videos, I talk a fair bit about Josiah's reforms, which are recorded in 2 Kings chapter 22 and 23, and what this indicates to us about the religious parlance of Jerusalem and the surrounding environs of Judah. And this is as late as the late 7th century, early 6th century BCE. So go and look and read it carefully. 2 Kings chapter 23. And I mean, what Josiah is trying, what his whole program is about is it's really focused on two things: eradicating the worship of other gods altogether except for Yahweh, and also eradicating all Yahweh worship outside of the Jerusalem temple. So you see him just going and mowing down like shrines and high places and other places devoted to the worship of other gods. But then you also see him breaking altars and destroying temples and shrines dedicated to Yahweh, but are, not in the temple. Something else really interesting that you see him doing is cleaning out all the polytheists, all the other gods that are being worshipped in the temple, including the Asherah pole.
Yeah, verse 14 of chapter 23. And, I thought it was interesting. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, there's Molech. Of course, there's other deities that are mentioned, and we're not even sure exactly what Molech is. There's different ideas about it. But something that I thought was fascinating in this area was they even do a burnt offering of the priests that were sacrificing these things.
Yeah,
it's
they literally sacrificed the priests.
Literally as a burnt offering.
To Yahweh.
So,
yeah.
God bless you. I'm just being. Hey, man, thanks, Doc. I appreciate this.
So I gotta say one more thing about this too.
Yeah,
something that scholars tend to think about this period of time, and something that they tend to think about Yahwism as is represented in the Hebrew Bible, is that this is like the religion of the kings. This is the religion of the kings who are living in Jerusalem. And the Jerusalem temple itself is not really a public building. The Jerusalem temple is best understood like a royal chapel, or like the local shrine that the king worshipped at. But like the temple in Jerusalem and the palace are connected, inextricably connected. And this is a reflection of just the, just sort of this very small minority view of, who God is and what we ought to do with him, that takes place in the palace and, in the temple of certain kings, but is absolutely not reflective of what the people who live out in the region outside of the city, you know, the people who are living in their family mishpachot, their clans. This is not reflective of what they're doing in their own religious practices.
We're getting a reflection of the elites
Yeah,
of their own people.
exactly.
And it's interesting you make that point. Dr. Joshua Bowen and Megan Lewis wonderfully paint this picture of, you know, the Mesopotamian, if you will, the kings list and these kings, and how the temples were guarded. You were not allowed to walk into these temples. Like, it was
yeah.
forbidden. It was so sacred that your common person is not welcome. So I wouldn't be surprised if they're lifting these ideas from, you know, from each other. I mean, it's just a common ancient Near Eastern thing where the temple is and where the gods dwell. You just don't have common
The
folk
gods live with
walking in
the
there.
king.
Yeah. Simple as that. Thank you so much, Doc. And Kipp, thank you. Judge Lot says, keep up the good work. Thank you for the super chat, Judge. I really appreciate the love and the support. Going to Scott Duke. I met Scott Duke at the Faithless Forum down in Texas this year. Thank you for the super chat, Scott.
Awesome.
He says, I'm stacked 3 or 4 MythVision videos deep trying to take it in all this meaty content. Well, you're going to be full and probably
Buried, man.
Yeah. Yeah, you're definitely, with eating all of this content, I don't know if you'll ever be able to go starving again. It's just not possible with everything I do here at MythVision. Thank you so much, Scott. Secular Rarity, just sending love to Derek and Dr. Kill. Y'all do great work. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you. Yeah. Seriously, thanks for the support. I'm just trying to make sure I hit all these super chats. Our buddy's back, Sentinel Apologetics. Why does LXX verse 7 read Pentas hoi angelos?
Okay, so that's all the, so this is I think he's referring to Deuteronomy chapter 32 here. Let me just pull it up. Deuteronomy 32:7. Hang on.
Thanks for the super chat too, by the way.
Deuteronomy 32:7. Okay. Yeah, so remember, ask your fathers and they will inform you, and okay, and they will proclaim to you. I think what he's, let me see that again. Hoi angoloi autu. So this is what I think what he's getting at here is the text reads kai anangalai soi, which means and they will report to you, but anangalai is the like that's the verbal root for the word angelos, from the word which we get angels, from which we get angels. So and this is because within the certainly the early understanding of what an angel was basically just a messenger from God or from the gods. So I think there might be some confusion about the verbal usage of this word report, which is connected to, you know, the idea of delivering a message, right? So this doesn't actually have anything to do with so-called angels. This is just a basic translation of what's happening in the Hebrew, at least as far as I can understand the question. I don't know. Oh, that's from Rob.
Yeah.
So
you know, I called him Rob. I called him Rob Lowe for a while.
I know. I know.
Yeah, I was complimenting him, man. You know,
I thought
right?
So. I mean, Rob Lowe's
a compliment.
He's a great looking guy. Seems like kind of a cool guy. Although I think he did one of those weird shows on the History Channel.
I don't know about it. I don't judge Rob Lowe for super chatting me today. Thank you so much, Sentinel Apologetics. Thank you. Steven Sorensen asks, and thank you for that super chat, how were the Dead Sea Scrolls dated? Recommended reading for this. Do you have anything in particular?
Several of those introductory texts that I mentioned will cover dating of the Dead Sea Scrolls. So the Dead Sea Scrolls Today by James C. Vanderkam, The Meaning of the Dead Sea Scrolls by Peter W. Flint and James C. Vanderkam. In particular, will cover dating methods for the scrolls. There's a lot of other technical literature that you could read. You could maybe hit me up for that on academia, and I could supply you with some sources. But to answer the question on how they are dated through a variety of methods, the most common way of dating the manuscripts is through paleography, which is an analysis of the handwriting. And from these early periods before the invention of printing, formal handwriting is something that was taught rather rigorously in the scribal schools, and it's also something that changed slowly over long periods of time. So the actual individual shapes of letters will start to change, and in that way, the handwriting, you can actually start to pinpoint the age of a manuscript on the basis of the writing style. And we have some ground truth for this when it comes to the Jewish period, from actual dated inscriptions and documentary texts. So we can be fairly clear about how accurate these dates are. And I would suggest that within our current system of paleography for dating the Dead Sea Scrolls, the dates are good within about a 100-year period. So give or take 50 years on either side of a date that's assigned to a manuscript. So several of these dates that are provided by paleography are also validated internally by historical claims within the text themselves that we can actually pinpoint to what's going on in the period during the in the area, in the region during the Hasmonean period or the Herodian period. And then, importantly, about 30 of the Dead Sea Scrolls manuscripts themselves have been carbon dated. And the carbon dates for these scrolls have also helped to very clearly calibrate the paleographic dates that have been assigned to them. And as I understand it, there's a project underway right now in the Netherlands to conduct new radiometric dating for over 100 of the manuscripts using the most advanced techniques, because the carbon-14 dating that was applied to the scrolls the last time, I believe, was in the 1990s. Fun fact, the Dead Sea Scrolls were actually some of the first objects ever to have been carbon dated, all the way back in I believe in the late 1940s.
Wow. Thank you so much, Stephen. Get up with him, and he'll get you some reading material on that. I know he loves figuring out chronology and things like that. Scott Daniel, thank you for the super chat.
And paleography is actually one of the things that I would say I am a specialist in. This is something that I do quite a bit of.
Thank you. Scott coming in with that super chat saying, Dr. Kill, please consider breaking your Nazarite vow and donating some of your facial hair to Derek.
You look great, Derek.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it. I feel like I'm 5.
I wanted to say, I was looking at you and thinking about how young you look. And then I watched the intro material you had of me, and I thought, oh my God,
you look young in those intros too.
Old. Yeah, I know. What happened to me? That wasn't that long ago.
Are you trying to say I look younger now that I shaved?
Yeah, I think you do.
Oh gosh. Well, thanks, Scott. I appreciate it. He might consider doing that, or I might just grow it out a little. In fact, the reason I shaved it all off is I was taking my clippers and I nubbed too much hair off. And in one spot, I had a patch that was bald, and I was like, nee. So I wanted to look like I was 5 for at least a week or two, and then, grow old in front of your own eyes. So thank you for the super chat, Scott. And Rob is back, and what he said was it's about Psalm 97 or 96.
Oh,
Good
okay.
attempt.
Sorry.
You're trying to avoid
Rob.
it. You're trying to avoid. No, I'm just kidding. Thank you for the super chat, Rob.
Oh, I'd have to go back and look here. And
Yeah.
honestly, I probably won't be able to give you a satisfying answer here on the fly, Rob, because you ask tough questions, and they require they require some thought.
Yeah.
So okay. What does this say? Bow down to him.
Okay.
All of you angels. Okay. So what I would say is this is a reflection of the Hebrew text, Kol Elohim, all you gods. I think this is a clear reflection of a lot of the stuff that I've been talking about in terms of what happened in the development of early Judaism. So, and this movement away from this idea of polytheism or then even henotheism into this idea that that there's only one God. There's still divine beings and there's still cosmic forces out there, but we relegate those and they all get downgraded to like these to basically to angels. So very often throughout the Septuagint, the Greek translations of the Hebrew Bible, which were all made, somewhere in the 3rd or 2nd century BCE, there is this reflection of this new Hellenistically inspired. I think it draws a little bit from Zoroastrianism. This worldview is starting to shape Judaism. So Judaism itself is actually like a development, not just of Israelite religion, but of all these other things that it's come in contact with over the hundreds of years, the recent hundreds of years after the destruction of Solomon's temple.
Thanks, Rob. Appreciate
I
it.
hope that helps, Rob.
Hopefully it did. Thank you. Aaron Adair with the 888. Thank you so much, Aaron. Aaron is the author. I believe this is the same Aaron Adair that did the show with me.
This is the star guy.
This is the star guy.
Awesome. That was a great show. Thank you for such a great show, Aaron.
He's awesome. Seriously, go get his book. Look, now people are talking about do a 999. Everybody wants to keep jumping up. Thank you so much. So out of super chats, I wanted to make sure I covered all those. If you have a question, feel free to shoot the super chat. But yeah, I really enjoy getting into these little things that are left out that aren't discussed. And people will go to my channel and go, Derek, you want to look at those things. You want to poke holes. You don't want to see how things fit. I feel like the same can be said in the opposite when you talk to an apologist. Their goal is to brush over the difficulties and make it not a problem so that your faith is still intact if you're holding on to these fundamentals, if that makes sense.
Hey, can we I noticed some other people asking for more stuff on the Dead Sea Scrolls. Something I wanted to do today, if we could just take a minute and interject here. I wanted to provide some information and some help to people. I gave you a link, Derek, in the private chat. If you can share your screen and then just click on this link here. I want everybody to be totally aware of this. I think it's really important. It's really exciting. So if you want, you can go and look at every single fragment of the Dead Sea Scrolls here at the Dead Sea Scrolls, the Leon Livy Dead Sea Scrolls Digital Library. So this is a project that's owned by the Israel Antiquities Authority, and it's benefited from tons of funding from international donors, but it's actually powered by Google, and they are using cutting edge technology to take new photographs of the scrolls fragments and these are high resolution digital photographs in infrared and in color. And I'm really excited about the color images because this is something that we did not have much access to at all before the site launched back in 2012. So prior to 2012, you couldn't see color images of almost all of the Dead Sea Scrolls except for just a few handfuls. Now you can see color photographs of all of them. So let's just, if you scroll back up here, Derek, if you click on, go right to the top of the page. If you go to explore the archive, right there, click on that. Now let's type in right where it says the quick search there. Just put your cursor there on the where the not
right
there.
here.
Just, there you go. Yeah. And just type in 4Q37, I think is the right one. Yes, there
Right
it
here,
is.
94
Here is
images.
4Q Deuteronomy J. So these are all the fragments of 4Q Deuteronomy J, the manuscript that that I had featured earlier. If you go to, you see, starting from the left there, Derek, if you count 1, 2, 3, the one on the top right, the white picture with the, click on that. Okay. Now click on fragment number, I think it's fragment number 10. One down. There you go. Click on that. There it is. So this is the fragment, and you can zoom in on this. And then there's infrared pictures of all of these fragments as well. We don't need it for this particular manuscript because it's nice and clear. It hasn't been damaged very badly. So, but this is, and maybe I will just do this. I will post the link itself in the chat because
Okay.
I personally think this is one of the absolute most important resources when it comes to the Dead Sea Scrolls. I want everybody to know where this is. I want everybody to be able to access it and use it regularly, because literally anything that you want, when you hear somebody talking on YouTube, whenever you hear me talking about what's going on with the Dead Sea Scrolls, if they mention specific manuscripts or specific places where you can look at these things, you can plug that into the search there and look at it for yourself.
Just so I popped it up on the screen, letting everybody see the link Dr. Kipp posted. So be sure to go and get you that link so you can check it out for yourself. But yeah, you could zoom in. Look how far you could zoom in. I mean, you're like,
so something that the IAA has also done as part of this project is they've made polytexture maps of all of these things, and what those are is basically they've shone light from, I think it's 32 different angles on the same fragment and taken pictures, and then they basically combine all the pictures together, and you can plug it into like a PTM reader, and it will actually give you basically like a 3D perspective of each individual fragment. But those are the sorts of things that they're huge files, so they can't really host them online, and they will when scholars write in and say, hey, I'm working on this manuscript and I'd like to look at these images, quite often they will release those to scholars like me for texts that they're working on.
wow. I'm saving that because I might take some clips, like screenshots of this stuff whenever I go to do any edits.
Totally.
That's amazing. That's amazing, man. Wow. We did get a super chat from Aaron Adair. Do you want to jump on that real quick?
Absolutely.
So Aaron said, and thank you, Dr. Adair. Appreciate your super chat. He said, this SOB guy, any opinion on changes to Psalms 110 or Psalm 110? Others note the Masoretic vowel, I think it is, the MT vowel pointing of verse 3 makes little sense. Any hidden polytheism there? Psalm 110.
This is, I believe this is just do all this. This is the sit at my right hand while I make your enemies a footstool psalm.
Mhm.
I don't think this is polytheism, but what is happening here? This is a famous. So this is a famous example that is often used by apologists to suggest that David is prophesying about the coming divine king, about the coming divine Messiah. And I would suggest that a careful reading of the text actually um, doesn't indicate any of that at all. What's happening here is in I know he asked specifically about verse 3. I'm just going to read this of David, a psalm. Yahweh said to my Lord, sit at my right hand while I make your enemies a footstool. Yahweh will stretch forth from Zion your mighty scepter, hold sway over your enemies. Your people come forward willingly on your day of battle in majestic holiness from the womb, from the dawn. Yours was the dew of youth. Yahweh has sworn and will not relent. You're a priest forever, a rightful king in the order of Melchizedek. Yahweh is at your right hand. He crushes kings in the day of his anger. He works judgment upon the nations, heaping up bodies, crushing heads far and wide. It's pleasant. He drinks from the stream on his day, therefore he holds his head high. So I actually have I made a response video to the YouTube apologist S.J. Thomason, and I actually deal a little bit with what's going on in this psalm from a perspective of the language. And what's happening here is there's a confusion between the addresser and the addressee in this psalm. One interpretation, one understanding of the text is that this is David speaking. So when he says here at the beginning, Yahweh said to my Lord, the thought is this is David speaking. So who is he speaking to? Oh, it must be like the supernatural coming Messiah who was actually Jesus, right? But that's not what's going on here. I would say that the Hebrew here actually says this is for David. This is a psalm for David. So this is the psalmist, the speaker, addressing David and saying, Yahweh said to my Lord, that is, Yahweh said to you, David, sit at my right hand while I make your enemies a footstool. So, so basically what's going on here, Aaron, I would say there's nothing inherently reflecting a polytheistic worldview within this particular psalm. But there's different issues at play here. There's been a lot of talk about the pointing of the word, where it says or it says Yahweh says to my Lord. The word there is Adoni, which is just the it's the singular construct form of the noun Adon, appended with the first person pronominal suffix e or ni. So this is just the conventional way of saying my Lord, Adoni. There's a thought, this has been put forward by apologists, that because there was no pointing, because Hebrew was always a consonantal language without vowels, and that these were added later in the medieval period, that there's no way to distinguish this word, Adoni, from the word that is used of Yahweh himself, Adonai, which is like a plural form of Adon with the pronominal suffix on it. So it's kind of like a royal address, a divine address to God. So the suggestion is that this text could very easily originally have read Adonai as opposed to Adoni. It's not a very convincing argument. There's no manuscript evidence that you can marshal to support this. And I would say among the Dead Sea Scrolls, which is our best sources, early sources for what's going on with the language and with the script, there's actually some evidence there which shows that when when a scribe wanted to indicate that this was in fact Adonai, they would lengthen the word using helping vowel letters such as the letter Vav. I hope that answers your question. I'm not sure if that's quite what you were getting at, but I did my best.
Thank you,
So
Dr.
thanks.
Adair. Appreciate the super chat. Captain Dadpool in the house. For everybody that doesn't know, he says, awesome show. Dr. Kill is kipping it. That's a first.
Yeah, man.
I've never heard that one.
Can I did so I think everybody should know about this too. I did an interview on Captain Dadpool's channel. It's probably a month ago now, maybe 6 weeks ago. If anyone's interested, I spend like 2 full hours talking about my work in the Dead Sea Scrolls forgeries, and basically lay out the whole story of what happened there, my involvement with the Scoia'tael collection and with the Museum of the Bible. If you're interested in any of that stuff, Captain Dadpool has the scoop.
Go subscribe to his channel. Here it is. I'll go ahead and I'll copy and paste it here in the chat so everybody can go over there and subscribe, as well as check out the clip. Go give it a like. Go check it out if you're interested in Dead Sea Scroll stuff.
So I have to say, there's a moment in that interview which is one of my favorites ever, where Captain Dadpool's host Natty Nat asks a question about drawing from a page on the History Channel's website about the Dead Sea Scrolls as a way to say, look how ridiculous the History Channel is. And she's like, they talk about this crazy scroll made out of beaten copper with that leads to hidden treasure. Like, what kind of crazy stuff is this? And I actually got to say, that's true. And watch as her mind was like blown in real time. It was one of those moments.
Wow, that's funny.
As a former teacher, one of my favorite things to do was to blow students' minds, right? Like, just to have and the rare moments where you're teaching and all of a sudden you could just see, the lights go on for one or a few of your students. It's one of the best things. And it's something I don't get to experience much at all of anymore. So to have this moment on that channel during that interview, it just it was amazing. So
that's
go
awesome.
Check it out. It's a great
interview.
Check
it out. Judge Lot, thank you for the very significant super chat, my friend. Was Yahweh brought to Canaan from the south, Sinai, or northwest Arabia, as opposed to being a native Canaanite deity? Did the Israelites basically replace Baal with Yahweh before merging Yahweh with El? Interesting question.
So yeah, this is a good question, and I think the general scholarly view on this is that yes, Yahweh was a deity, maybe a Midianite deity, or a Kenite deity that originated somewhere in the Sinai Peninsula, or maybe even as far south as Egypt, and was imported into the Canaanite region. And yes, over time appears to have become basically a competitor and then a replacement for Baal. There's some really interesting texts in the Hebrew Bible. I believe it's Psalm 94, which speaks of Yahweh as the one who rides his chariot on the clouds. It's a direct reflection of a famous hymn that was sung to Baal, in which it calls him literally the rider on the clouds. So it's a very interesting situation. It's an interesting question.
Thank you so much, Judge. There is always a lot there to talk about. I had a question here that I saw. It wasn't super chat, but it was MythVision podcast. Why do so many Mediterranean gods rise to replace earlier gods as the head of a pantheon? Zeus, Baal, Marduk, Horus, Kumarbi. I'm saying that right? Yeah.
So, yeah. Okay. Kumarbi. All right. Yeah. So this is a good question, and in terms of as I understand it, at least, and this is absolutely not my field, but as I've read, and I do this when I've taught introduction courses, introduction to the Hebrew Bible and to Israelite religion. One of the things that you encounter within the ancient Near Eastern religions, at least, is this idea that the ideas about the gods and who they are and what they do are very much reflective of real life. So as much as the kings are thought of as, human representatives of the gods or human reflections of the gods, the way that a kingdom worked in antiquity was very much a reflection of their ideas of how the pantheon worked. So, um, what we think happened was that this was a regular occurrence, that as gods got older in the imaginations of their worshipers, they would over time pass out of fashion. They would stop to be, the worship would shift and allegiance would shift from them gradually over time to younger, uh more hip deities. And this was sort of a reflection of something that took place in the state too. The sons would take over from their fathers and would rule the kingdom in a similar fashion. The sons of the gods, over vast periods of times, would take over and rule the pantheon in the stead of their progenitors. So we don't have any actual sources or evidence for how far back this projects, but the idea is that the gods of old, who predate Yahweh and Baal and El, are just lost to history. But there were gods long before these ones that people worshipped, and who over time were replaced in this cyclical fashion of enthronement.
I wish we found, some clear stuff on that. That would be awesome to
That
trace
is
something.
exciting. Yeah.
It'd be awesome to see El replace a particular deity to
Yeah.
find.
El is a young deity.
Yeah, like wow. It's really cool to, I mean, only because look at the religion that it's stemmed out of, right? Like we don't get shocked to find out that Zeus replaces Kronos, or or you're going to look at Jupiter or things like that. We're not like, it's cool, it's fun, it's interesting, but when you have a religion that impacts the world as the Abrahamic ones, you really want to know, like, how did this all begin, and who is your daddy and what does he do? You know that Arnold Schwarzenegger point where he's like, who is your daddy and what does he do? You want to know who the daddy is. You want to know who the mommy is.
Yeah.
You want to know where all these babies come from. These sons of God, which are children of El.
And this,
I don't know how much clearer you can
this
get. But
happens fairly naturally too, right? As time passes, long periods of time passes, people just forget. They forget about who these gods were.
I just think, man, that's straightforward. Like what it says, what we want to do is we want to make it metaphor, or make it symbolic, or sons of God isn't literal, or the wife of God. Oh, well, no, that never was. Like the book I'm reading, that by Francesca Stravacapoulou. I always try to say it in like a Greek way of saying it, but literally God has gonads. Okay, like he has a nose, he has arms, he has feet, he has a head, he smells. This is not just anthropomorphic language giving you this invisible essence that is outside of space and time. Right. Get out of here. No, that is a very modern idea.
And this is something too that we can actually see a very a very sophisticated approach to the Pentateuch certainly is one through which you can actually, when you pick the text apart and assign it to what scholars imagine to be the sources of the Pentateuch, this is one of the differences we see, is that within the Yahweh source, God, he's, he walks in the garden. He builds the man out of clay. He meets Hagar at a well. He's there with Moses when Moses strikes the rock at Meribah. He's actually standing on top of the rock, it says. And then in the later so-called priestly source, no, the God, this God, the very, anthropomorphic kind of God is starting to disappear, and he becomes a voice from the heavens, and he just speaks things into being as opposed to actually builds them with his hands. It's a very, very interesting idea that you can see develop and actually kind of track through the text themselves.
Wow. I love thinking about that kind of stuff. Thank you. Anubis Fire, thanks for the super chat. He says, in the Ugaritic text, El had replaced an older god and was getting older. He gave the throne to Atar, but it was contested by Hadad.
Exactly right. Yeah. And this is not really my area, but yeah, this is what we see is by the time we encounter El in the Ugaritic literature, he's already an old man. Old god. Sorry.
Yeah. And I mean, what is a god? But obviously, as John J. Collins would say, a bigger version of man.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, the older you get back into these myths, you find that the gods themselves can die. Now, I know that there's some that don't, of course, as time goes by, but like even they can be destroyed. What is Tiamat other than a divine? Is a deity that. So, yeah.
And some of this, there's confusion here too in terms of the language. One of the most misunderstood terms from the Hebrew Bible is the word olam, which most often is translated as eternity. And it's an unfortunate translation because within the conception of ancient people, I don't think they actually had, and I just don't even think that they had a concept of like eternity, like an unending beginning or end of things. So early on, this just means when it's applied to people quite often, and it basically means like the duration of your natural life is olam. When it's applied to the gods, it just means a very, very, very long time. Certainly much, certainly much longer than, the lifetime of a person, because as John J. Collins said, they're like people, but bigger in every respect. But still, it's still a fixed time. It has a beginning and it has an end.
Wow. Yeah. You ever watch those Thor movies and you see his dad's on the throne and with the eye patch, he's getting old. Eventually Thor's going to have to take over. So it's reflective even in modern, Hollywood movies. Aramgard, thank you for the super chat. I'm going to butcher this. Yeah. Kuntalet, Arud, has references to Yahweh of Samaria and Yahweh of Teman. Were they recognized as different deities or different forms of the same deity? I just want to mention, I don't know these examples, but I do know that Francesca Stravacapoulou will say there are multiple Yahwehs. They're not the same. This is something that she says.
And I think the scholarly opinion on this is mixed. Like I think there's definitely scholars who would say, no, these are all reflective of a singular Yahweh. But maybe this is a poor way of understanding it that stems from our ideas of what the kingdoms of Israel and Judah actually looked like, even during the Iron Age. We tend to have this notion that they're very, very interconnected, that the individual cities, function very much like our provincial or state or federal governments do today, when in actual fact, I think some of these places are much more disconnected from each other than the text in our own imagination thinks of them to be. So I think, yeah, Dr. Stavrokopoulou is probably right in suggesting that there's many Yahwehs, but I would probably soften that to say that there's many representations of Yahweh that are, local, and they can be probably different from one locality to another. But I also don't think that there was this sense that the Yahweh of Samaria and the Yahweh of Temna were deities that, in the imagination of their worshippers, that competed with each other. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, no, that does. There's I don't know. I haven't heard her go exhaustive on this. I just know she says they're different Yahwehs. So she might have that same answer. In fact, I'm interviewing her for the 433 people watching right now. I'm
Oh my
interviewing
God.
her next month. And on her
Yes.
book, God. So I'm going to go for the jugular on this. I don't play games. I want people to know, yes, this God that every Christian talks about is outside space and time and is omni this, omni that, omni this. Throw that away. They don't know what they're talking about. Pause. Let's go to someone who knows what they're talking about and actually pay attention. Because, sure, we've evolved. Our ideas evolve. Our philosophy evolves. Our concepts evolve. And let's admit that what we know of as God today and the way people understand it is not the same as the text you're reading. That's just, so you want to believe in God, you're a theist, cool. I have no problem with that. There's amazing philosophy out there for people who want to say that there's some agent or mind or being, and this is that God, that mind outside space time, blah, 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 blah. That's cool. When you bring this ancient text, when you bring this text that can be shown, right, to have its roots in ancient Near Eastern ideas, cosmology, flat Earth, solid heavens, right? So you have a solid
dome.
I mean, come on. Once you do that, you're shooting yourself in the foot. That's what you're doing. Sorry, I'm being polemical right now, but
No.
I have to.
It's all good.
All right, another super chat.
Your show, man.
I cannot pronounce your name, and I apologize. Yeah. Very, very interesting. What was the role of Michael the Archangel in the Book of Daniel, the Qumran material?
Oh, yeah, this is an awesome question. So this is part of this this developing angelology, this developing cosmic dualistic worldview that's all taking place in the Second Temple period that is having a dramatic effect on the thinking of various communities of Jews. And one of these, along with the downgrade of gods in the pantheon to the function of angels, is the development of individual angels themselves. So this is where the angel Gabriel first makes an appearance, and then there's angels named angels in the Book of First Enoch, Raphael, and is someone else going to mention it here in the chat? There's it might be Samael, I think, who's also actually mentioned in a much later text, the Genesis Rabbah, actually, which is an interesting story about in the Genesis Rabbah. It says that this wicked angelic figure Samael is the one who basically embodied the serpent in the Garden of Eden and actually had sexual intercourse with Eve and was the actual father of Cain. It's a crazy, wild story, I know. So, but this is a period in time in which the angelology is developing to the point where they're starting to get names and they're starting to get jobs. So the archangel is basically just the captain of the forces of God. He's the captain of God's army. He's the great angel. He's the leader of the military arm of God, and he makes appearances in the Book of Daniel as this cosmic figure of power and authority, who's going to destroy God's enemies. And there's a few really interesting texts in the Dead Sea Scrolls. Michael the Archangel makes an appearance in the War Scroll, again leading the forces of God in battle against the forces of Belial, or the enemy, the great enemy of God. And he makes an appearance in the so-called Melchizedek scroll. He's this figure, almost like a mini god himself, but maybe not quite, who's going to deliver the wrath of God upon the enemies of God. I wanted to say one more thing about the appearance of Archangel in the War Scroll. I've done some actual academic work on this. I've published, I think, 3 articles which deal with the source material behind the War Scroll itself. We actually have other copies of this document that was found in Qumran Cave 1. We have some other copies from Cave 4, as well as one from Cave 6. And in one of the manuscripts from Cave 4, it looks like we actually have source material for this later document that became the War Scroll. And one of the really exciting things that we have in this particular document is a development of the ideas about this Archangel Michael. We have texts that don't name this figure, but which seem to promote this idea of this great captain of the angels, the captain of the hosts of Yahweh, or the hosts of God, who isn't named in this particular document, but has these same characteristics and traits. And then in the later version, which appears in the War Scroll itself, suddenly, he's called Michael, the Archangel. It's all really exciting.
If I may, and thank you, I can't pronounce your name. Thank you so much for that super chat. I just want to make a brief announcement, right? This is my advertisement moment to let everyone know. Go subscribe right now to Dr. Kipp Davis. Of course, if you don't, this is, me being as kind as I can. You will be destroyed by the angel, Michael, not Gabriel.
Yeah.
Gabriel, he doesn't have what Michael has. Michael is fierce. He doesn't show. Yeah, he shows no mercy to people who totally deflect from subscribing to Dr. Kipp's channel. I gave him a way better deal than God, and he came over.
That makes sense. So he's working for me now.
Dude, I'm fully convinced. I take everything you say without even fact checking it, because I don't need to. You are, by definition, next to the word fact in the dictionary. For anyone who doesn't know, go subscribe. If you do, he will have every incentive to want to come back on this channel, to come hang out with us on MythVision. This is why I always say this, because I want people I bring onto the channel to, want to come back and to get you guys your questions, your answers, and have fun doing these things, getting people educated. It gives Dr. Kipp something when he goes to bed at night going, when's the next time I'm going to do a video with MythVision? I look forward to doing another MythVision video. I'm going to bring Michael with me in case anyone wants to start some crap in the chat, So there you have it. There's my commercial break. I hope it wasn't too much for everybody. I hope you could tolerate me and my polemics. But yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Kipp, for answering that question. I have some more super chats, if that's cool.
Yeah.
All right, Aaron, we're going to be wrapping things up here soon. I just want everyone to know in the chat. So if you have a question, ask now. We'll run with the super chats. And don't miss the outro, which is the same as the intro. I mean, I really did. I think it's pretty fantastic intro there. Aaron, he says, I always wonder why the authors of the Old Testament, New Testament books weren't publishing their books with a proper commentary. It's a mess with an awful lot of confusion. I think the Talmud and the Mishnah is trying to do something about that, but
oh my goodness. But I think here, maybe this is the problem here is that, it looks like a mess to us, but we have to think like an ancient person thought. And I would say that the New Testament, much of what's in the New Testament itself is doing just, it's providing commentary and an interpretation on on the scriptures, the Hebrew scriptures of the Jews. I recently helped out with a video on Apologia's channel, talking
Yeah,
about
that was
Messianic
great.
prophecy. And yeah, you should go check it out. I'm really happy with this one. But one of the points I make over and over in that video, and I cannot stress this enough, is that at the time that the New Testament was written, at the time that the Dead Sea Scrolls were written, this is just what the Jewish writers did. They took the Old Testament texts and they mined them for every little detail that they possibly could and applied them to their own day, to their own circumstances, to what was happening to them in their own time, which is why we actually see so-called prophecies that were supposedly fulfilled in the life of Jesus in the Gospel of Matthew and elsewhere in the New Testament, cited by the writers of the Dead Sea Scrolls and applied to their community as if they satisfied their ideas of who they were, that they were actually fulfilled prophecies in the life of the community. It's wild. So
It's kind of charismatic-y in a way, I guess. It's like kind of like
it. Yes, the reader response theory to the Bible and these ideas of the prophecies having currency for us today. This is a very old idea, and this is we owe this. This is the heritage that this is what we've inherited from the New Testament writers themselves. This is what they were doing.
Yeah, I love it. Dead Sea Scroll scholar as yourself points out this is what they were doing in the Qumran community. They were doing this very thing, applying a lot of these texts and recontextualization is what I like to use the term, but it's just applying out of context. Isaiah 14, anyone with common sense reading that would look at that and go, there's no way that's talking about Jesus. Now, Christians will find ways to try, modern ways of trying to say, no, that is talking about Jesus. But anyone who's reading this is why I think a lot of Christians end up deconverting, because they're like, when they go back and read it and they realize, no, the King Ahaz, and like you start looking at his wife.
Yeah,
his wife is
7:14.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Did I say 14 something? I meant,
you did. So it's that.
You know where
Isaiah
I'm going
7,
with this.
Yeah.
But like they lift this little thing out.
But this is I want people to understand that this isn't the New Testament writers trying to pull a fast one on people and trying to dupe their audience. No, far from it. They're just doing good Bible exegesis. They're doing nothing any different from what the Jews were doing with their scriptures. This is just what they did.
Because to them, the scriptures were alive, always present, always.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
So you can apply it in any circumstance.
James L. Kugel wrote this absolutely fabulous book I have on my shelf here somewhere. This one here. So this is one I would recommend to everyone. So Professor Kugel taught for many, many, many years at Harvard. He taught a course at Harvard, an undergraduate course that would regularly get over 900 students, just because he was such a damn good teacher. An introduction to the Bible course. But in that book, it's a very, very pleasant, easy to read book that basically covers, really popular famous stories from the Bible: Adam and Eve, the Great Flood, the Book of Daniel, who Isaiah was, and all of these stories from the Old Testament. And he basically goes through and unpacks them and says, okay, this is where they came from in their original setting, but then here's what the Jews did with them. over hundreds of years, how they reinterpreted their own literature, their own scriptures. And he provides what he identifies as 4 assumptions that every ancient interpreter had with regards to the biblical text. And the very first one of these is that I think it's the first one. No, maybe it's not. But one of these is that the Bible, the scriptures were cryptic, that quite often where they said A, they actually meant B. And so you had to get in there and look for coded, like it was a coded text. You had to go in there and look for the deep meaning behind, the text. So it kind of looks like it's talking, this prophecy looks like it's talking about King Ahaz and the impending threat of Syria in Israel. But what it's really talking about is the arrival of
Paul does
of a
this in
Messiah.
1 Corinthians 9. He says,
Absolutely. Paul does it all over the place.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm actually having a scholar come on soon. This is my little tease to my audience.
Okay.
I'm always having scholars come on. I will not name who, but they are a Pauline scholar. I've got some big Pauline scholars this year. I hope to go see, even Paula Fredrickson and others. But this particular scholar is going to be showing how Paul did that and how Paul was using and not what it originally meant. He's lifting these scriptures, using them probably for authoritarian purposes, as well as reapplying them to his current situation. And in 1 Corinthians 9, Paul sit there and says, as it is written, you shall not muzzle your oxen while it threshes, the whole 9. And he goes, does God care about oxen? No, he's talking about us. It's like, whoa, dude, you just made, obviously the idea is that while the oxen's eating or working, it should eat. And he's saying, we're working. These other apostles can marry and they can have a wife and they can do this and that and they get paid. What, me and Barnabas don't get to get paid? We work our butts off and you are our workmanship and da-da-da. So he's like lifting, kind of like Benny Hinn would, some type of biblical thing and then applying it. I could do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Give me 10% and you'll have... Anyway, definitely charismatic.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I had to cut you off. That was so accurate to what I'm finding out as I keep studying. So with 450 people watching, hit the like button. Go subscribe to Dr. Kill. I've one more super chat, but did you?
Okay. No, I was just going to say we should probably blow through these super chats.
Oh, yep, I got 2. Sorry, someone just jumped in, I think. All right, Mike Ainsworth says, was the Book of Enoch written about the same time as the Dead Sea Scrolls? Are its themes reflected in any of the Dead Sea Scrolls?
Oh, yes, very heavily. The Book of Enoch, the Aramaic original, I'm not saying that the autographs or the autographa, as Josh McDowell would say, but the Book of Enoch in its Aramaic original, we have copies of this in the Dead Sea Scrolls. Some of them are quite old, dating all the way back to the very early 2nd century. The book itself comes from around the same period. Some scholars have actually suggested that the writers of the Book of Enoch went on to found this community of Essenes living at Qumran. So the Book of Enoch itself, I think most scholars would date to the mid-3rd or maybe even the late 3rd century BCE. And yeah, many of the ideas within Enoch itself are then reflected very, very heavily throughout the Dead Sea Scrolls. But not just there. The Book of Enoch, I think, and scholars will argue, is a very had a very, very heavy influence on even texts from the Old Testament, like the Book of Daniel.
Thank you so much, Mike. I appreciate the super chat. William Arns, thank you again for the super chat, my friend. Good to see you. Isn't this tension between the ethereal God followed by iconoclast, such as Calvinist, contrast with Catholic portraits of an anthropomorphic God? Sorry, I read that kind of fast there.
I'm sorry, I don't know anything about Calvinists and Catholics.
I think, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I really have no idea.
So I was definitely a Calvinist, and God, he's omni everything. The one thing that you couldn't say he was as a Calvinist, or I couldn't, even though some Calvinists I think just make no sense, is that God is all loving. God is love, but he loves his elect with everything. The ones who are not his elect, he hates. I did not beat around the bush. But the idea of God being an ethereal God, that is something that I think is a development that all Christianity started to use. It wasn't just Calvinists. This is something that I think they did that. I am not 100% sure, as maybe there's some versions of God throughout church history that take on more of an anthropomorphic version, like we've been talking about in the source material. But it makes a lot of sense that it's not a stretch to think this man is a divine being. It's not difficult, especially in the Hellenistic time, that Jesus would take on this idea as well. So there's a lot there. If I didn't answer that, or if there's something you want me to go further into, William, email me at derek@mythvisionpodcast.com. And I'd be more than happy to ask any scholar or try to answer it myself. Doc Pleroma, this is similar to the cross gematria of the 318. Abrahamic servants circumcised in the Epistle of Barnabas. Yeah, they didn't just lift text. They had numerology. I mean, they did all sorts of stuff. Did they do that in the Dead Sea Scrolls? Is there clear numerology stuff going on there?
There's actually there's horoscopes in the Dead Sea Scrolls. There's brontologia in the Dead Sea Scrolls, which is a type of a horoscope. They do crazy things with calendars, because one of the things that they are absolutely obsessed with is getting the priestly courses right, and they're following a solar calendar which is in conflict with the current lunar calendar of the Herodians. So there's lots of that going on. Yeah, it's a little bit different than the numerology, but it's all kind of, I think, in that same wheelhouse.
Thank you so much, Doc. Damon Davis, thank you for the super chat. Was Jesus meant? Notice I pronounced his last name properly.
Yeah, very good.
I'm getting better. I'm growing. I used to call you Davies every time. Kipp Davies. The whole. Anyway, I'm growing up. I'm maturing, even though I look like I'm getting younger. Was Jesus mean to his mother? Didn't he tell her to get lost?
I believe in Mark, he was. So I have to look at it a little bit more closely.
Yeah, he had some anger problems, I think. There seems to be. Dr. Bart Ehrman, of course, talks about this in particular, and so that's something worth looking into. Thank you. I hope we answered that. My friend Eric, thank you so much, Eric, for the super chat, my friend. Hi, bro. Does Dr. Kipp consider the Essenes were expecting the Messiah at the final battle to put an end to time, same as the Christians were expecting the second coming of Jesus in the first century?
Do you know what kind of do you know what that is? And
The what?
The money? Do you know what that is? Where's that from? Do you know?
I think he's down in Peru.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Yeah.
Yes. So the Messianic expectation among the writers and collectors of the Dead Sea Scrolls was very similar to the later Christian expectations of the second coming of Jesus. It's this idea that, so for the people who lived at Qumran, they were convinced that that the end was nigh, that they were living on the cusp, on the very brink of the last days. And the whole reason for them to congregate and to get together in this community, get together out in the Judean desert, was to prepare for the coming of the last days and the final battle between the forces of God, the sons of light, and the forces of Belial, the sons of darkness. And for them, the Messiah was, I mean, it didn't have quite the same sort of cosmic expectation that you see in Christianity. For them, I mentioned earlier, there were two Messiahs. There was a Messiah of Joseph, who was like he would be the new Davidic king. No,
he was the king. Joseph. Was it Joseph? Okay.
I'm pretty. Or actually, no. Sorry, maybe I got that wrong.
I thought that David was the ruler king, and Joseph was the priestly Messiah figure, or something like that.
I have to go back and look. It's either Joseph and Aaron or Joseph and David, but
Okay.
I think it might be. But anyways, all that to say, there was an anointed priest and an anointed king who would rule in this new kingdom. And these were the Mashiachim, the messiahs. And they were not gods, though. They weren't divine beings. They were just greatly inspired, endowed men with the power of God and the authority from God to rule in the kingdom of God in the last days.
Can I ask you something about the last days here with my friend
Yeah,
Eric?
sure.
Because me and him are cut from a similar cloth. What was their expectation of the end? Was it cosmic? I mean, because those full preterists like me, man, I used to think it was just the end of the temple. I thought it was just the destruction of Jerusalem, and that's it. That was the end. The end of the age was the destruction of the Jerusalem temple, according to full preterism. Was it bigger than that? Was it cosmic? Was it a transformation which really would change the world?
I think it was, it was, in that sense, it was a global event. It would absolutely change the world. And it's interesting. It seems that the writers and the collectors of the Dead Sea Scrolls look to have been pretty deeply confirmed pacifists. So they didn't imagine themselves necessarily fighting this battle. They were going to be present at it, and they were going to be along, in the same company with the angels who were going to go and do the fighting. And God was the one who was actually ultimately going to wipe out all of their enemies. But there was definitely an expectation that this was going to be a global event, that the new kingdom, God's kingdom, the new kingdom of Israel, would be one that would basically overthrow the entire Roman Empire, which, as far as they were concerned, was the entire world. And that there would be, so one of the neat things in the scrolls that we see is this idea that the Jerusalem temple was totally corrupt and illegitimate by this point in time. And for them, they had this belief in a celestial temple, a temple of Yahweh that's like in the clouds in heaven. And there's actual texts that indicate that they had regular ceremonies and rituals in which they would go and worship in this celestial temple. It's really cool. But in their expectation, in their imagination, this celestial temple would finally come back down to earth. There's actually there's a whole large document called the Temple Scroll. It's the largest of the Dead Sea Scrolls, which basically deals with what to do when the celestial temple comes back to earth in the last days.
There's so much, dude. Mind blown on earth as it is in heaven. These prayers, this idea in Revelation measuring this temple that isn't there. If you're taking Revelation to be dated after the destruction, what is this measurement of a heavenly temple that John is depicting of? This
It's
there's
very
so much
similar, right?
Yeah, man, this is good stuff. Thank you so much, Eric, for bringing this.
All of this is drawn from the book of Ezekiel, right?
Yeah, it is. It's from previous scripture, but it keeps getting applied. It keeps happening. Thank you so much, Eric, for that. Just a couple more here. MJT 5-2. Does 1 Enoch 14 influence Daniel or vice versa?
Off the top of my head, I'm not sure what the text is, but I would say that there's very, very obvious connections between lots of the material in the book of First Enoch and the book of Daniel. I tend to think that the book of Daniel is rewriting a lot of Enoch, and I would say that this is not this is part of even just a larger genre of literature. We see the same thing happening with texts of Jeremiah in the Dead Sea Scrolls, where the book of Enoch is rewritten, but featuring Jeremiah as the hero, or texts of Moses, where the Book of Enoch is being rewritten, but featuring Moses. And I would say the same thing is happening with the Book of Daniel.
Thank you
But
so
not all
much.
scholars think that. Scholars do see the direct, they see it the other way around.
Oh, wow.
So there's lively debate about this.
Eric's back for more to say the currency is soul, sun. Dr. Kipp, I am from Peru and a huge fan of the Dead Sea Scrolls. Happy New Year for both of you. You guys rock. IO, baby. IO's going down. No, I'm just kidding.
Eric.
You have no clue what IO is. No, Eric, thank you so much for the super chat, man. He's a friend of mine, personal friend of mine. So, man, love you. Thank you. Yeah, Dr. Kipp, final words from you before I do our amazing outro. I want everyone to subscribe to your YouTube channel. Let me see.
Yeah, I've had a pretty busy month, so please go check out what I've been doing. Dr. Josh and I made the first of a series of 2 response videos to Inspiring Philosophy. Please check that out. I did the video on Messianic prophecy over at Apologists channel, and you should watch the whole series. It's the 4th part in a 4-part series against basically responding to Lee Strobel's A Case for Christmas. Please go check that out. It's some of my favorite work that I've done in a long time. And then please also watch the video that we premiered last night with Dr. Josh and with Dr. Dan McClellan, where we address some of the real serious problems with how Dr. David Falk reads his Bible. Please watch the whole thing, and just to be on the lookout as well. Part 2 of the video response to Inspiring Philosophy is coming. Josh and I took a bit of a break from that for Christmas and to do some other things, but we're getting right back to that. And then I will be starting up a Patreon here in the near future with the goal of putting together a nice series on the Dead Sea Scrolls, and not just what they teach us about early Judaism and Christianity and the Hebrew Bible, but also responding to the very many ways that they have been misused and abused by Christian apologists in their work. So this is a long-term project. This is something I've wanted to do for a long time. It's slow going, and I'm going to probably launch the Patreon with this goal in view, and I hope eventually to turn this stuff into a book.
Yeah, I look forward to it. If you need any help, you can always message me. I'll tell you what I know, at least. Doc Plurma says, why don't you just beat up IP behind Walmart like normal scholars? I mean...
Can I say, on a personal level, I like Michael Jones way too much to do that, and I'm not. I'm a lover at heart, not a fighter.
You are. Right. It's just funny. I'm friends with him, actually. We talk periodically. I want everybody to also consider becoming a patron of MythVision. This is going to be a killer video on the cosmology in the Bible. Dr. William Lane Craig just keeps holding on for he can't let go. He's like that person in a relationship. She's cheating on him. She's doing him dirty, but he can't believe that that's even possible. And the guy look, there she is on camera. Look at that move she just did. And he's just like, that can't be her. That's not her birthmark. Okay, the Bible is like that. Okay, and he's ignoring it. He is so ignoring it. So please consider helping me out here. Join the Patreon. You can join for as little as $3 a month. It is not that much. And you have access to everything I have. Now, of course, if you want to help out more, you can, but for as little as $3 a month to keep me alive and keep me going. Because if I don't have this, I die, like physically. You know how they say the wages of sin are death? The wages of no patron is death for me. It's like, anyway, I'm being sarcastic, but seriously, consider helping out. Endless content. Someone asked me for more John J. Collins stuff, and I said, well, if you go down to the bottom here and you hit load more like 10 to 15 more times, you'll find a treasure trove of Elaine Pagels, John J. Collins, Joel Baden. I mean, I have a lot of stuff that has not made it onto YouTube, and it's all on the Patreon. So go and consider joining. Dr. Kill, thank you.
I got to hang out with Dr. John Collins in a PhD seminar at the University of Toronto back in 2009. It was lots of fun.
His
Sorry,
accent,
that's all I've got.
his accent is amazing, man. You can't
Oh
argue
yeah,
with that accent.
he's a great guy too. He's super kind, and he's super easygoing, and just a terrific guy.
Absolutely. As are you, my friend. As are you. As we go out, hit the like button. Check out his channel. Go subscribe. In fact, go right now and watch the video he did yesterday on Dr. David Falk's biblical skills.
Do it, man.
To see a critical analysis of how he is doing that. And I just thought, man, here's my advice. Anybody, I've tried to make amends. I've swept my side of the street and communicating with him. There's a lot more behind the scenes. But at the end of the day, you could tell he wants nothing to do with me. Absolutely nothing to do with me. Nothing to do with my channel. I'm talking about Dr. David Falk. I've tried my best to just try to make things good. I have nothing bad to say, but I do have a little bit of advice. Maybe someone who follows Dr. Falk can give this advice. When you go to do popcorn reviews of people, be critical about the work, maybe what is said, just like as an example of the episode that you guys did yesterday. But try not to get down into the personal or try to be derogatory and muddy the water or whatever. My advice would be not to do that, especially to another academic, someone who maybe is just coming out of nowhere with nothing positive and they don't really have any skill in what they're doing. Okay, whatever. I still don't think you should take things and be personally derogatory. But some of the things that he said when he did that to Dr. Josh really upset a lot of people, including Christians who thought he went too far. I'd say take your advice from your own people, since they're part of your clan, so to speak, and consider that. So with that being said, let's leave on a positive note. Dr. Kill, keep on killing it.
Thank you, man. Thanks for having me. And Happy New Year, everyone.
You too. And ladies and gentlemen at home, never forget, we are MythVision. And I'm 12 years old.
Back in Washington, Kipp Davis is getting his first look at a final prized fragment in the Museum of the Bible's collection.
This is a fragment that contains text from Genesis chapter 32, and it's supposedly from the 1st century BC or the 1st century CE.